Okay, this session is being recorded. We talked about, a little bit about how a case gets through the court system on Monday. There's another image, try to give you a visual on how the judicial system works. They call this one the wedding cake model. And it's kind of inverse, misdemeanors at the bottom, less serious offenses, serious felonies, celebrated cases. What do we mean by celebrated cases? Or do we even really celebrate a case? What are they talking about?
Like the OJ trial, maybe?
That's exactly what I was going to say. The OJ trial. What's that other guy who killed his wife when she was pregnant, dumped her in the bay?
Ocean and Watts.
What was it?
Ocean and Watts.
This happened in Modesto, I think. No? Which is the one you're thinking of?
That was in Colorado.
Oh, in Colorado. No. Which one did you think?
No, I was thinking, I don't know if you're talking about Pearson, no, was it?
It's
I think
something.
Pearson is the guy, yeah, he was trying to come out of, Peruvian and fight this thing again.
That's
Yeah.
the one. Yeah, he came out crying on camera, please help me find Lacey Peterson. That's
There you
it.
go.
Peterson, that's it. It was the Peterson case. It should really say celebrated. It should really more say notoriety, cases of notoriety that we're more familiar with. As they progress from the courtroom, from the initial findings, some of them work their way through the appellate courts and even get up to the Supreme Court. They become landmark cases when they get to the Supreme Court decision because a ruling has been made on that case. Okay? So wedding cake. Criminal acts that are very serious, notorious, may receive the full complement of the full process from arrest to trial, like Peterson. That was really interesting, as was OJ. Most of you weren't alive though, right? For OJ? I didn't think so. Okay. So Peterson though, some of you hopefully were around. Notoriety. So according to the wedding cake model, high profile cases receive the most attention from the justice system and the media. Why do you believe sexual offenses are considered by criminal justice system and the media to be high profile cases? Therefore, at the top of the wedding cake model, they'll find an example. Okay, so we're looking at sexual offenses. Can anyone think of a sexual offense case that had high notoriety? Within the last 15, 20 years or so?
There's a gang enhancement case where it's the most controlling gang enhancement case in California right now, where 3 people went and raped somebody.
You remember the name?
Yeah,
I know, it's hard to come up with a name.
I can't even find my list of all the cases.
Oh, that's fine. But see, you guys are talking. Your minds are going. You're thinking of something. There was a case. There was one in Fresno. It was a family, and the father of the family was abducting children, having their own, having relations with these children, and he brainwashed them. He would let them go out after so often. Some of them even attended school, but then they had to come back. This was a high notoriety way up north. Turns out they found the guy out. They did the investigation. He was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison. The house where all of these atrocities happened, people kept coming by. They were treating it like a historical landmark. So the city went out and leveled it, put a parking lot there.
Are you talking about the Turpin case?
That sounds familiar.
David Allen
Fresno?
Turpin, they had like 17 kids in the basement.
Fresno, or is that somewhere else?
That was here in
Oh no, yeah. There's one similar, but this is, and they weren't in the basement. They were just brainwashed. We would let some of them go out, attend school, and then come back. Oh, I do remember Turpin. That's another one. One of those children actually attended college in San Jacinto. And they asked us, teachers, if you know of this child and the media approaches you, please don't say anything, which I never would. It's none of my business. Okay, so high notoriety, sexual offenses. How about any other high notoriety case? Anything come to mind?
Bundy?
Bundy! There's a good one. What did Bundy do?
He raped and killed women around colleges.
Okay. Did he have some other special skill that he did?
He
approach people, they liked them, and it didn't end well for them. Okay, so Bundy, these are the things we're talking about. High notoriety, cases where the public has an interest. I don't think this class talks about it. But there's a case that happened in Texas about 3 years, maybe 4 years ago. I don't remember the city, but it was a city in Texas. Police officer, duly sworn to protect the public, enters an apartment, shoots and kills. What? Male. And she's a white female officer. You remember this one?
Yeah.
This is like
You know that was
2
it?
years ago. Just-
When was it?
This is like about 2 years ago.
It was a little bit more, because I know I have it in some of my classes before that.
They had a no-knock warrant went in and.
No, this is different. Yeah, there was no knock warrant. This is just her coming home. She said she thought it was her apartment.
Oh, you put that in your 8101.
Yeah, that's where it was then, right? Okay, so she said it was her apartment, and she walked in thinking it was her apartment, saw a strange figure, male, black, feared for her safety, opened fire and shot. Lies! She was having a relationship with this guy. She lived above on the next floor up. She really thought she was gonna get away with this. So it made for a good discussion, I thought, so I did use it in one of my discussions. It did have a lot of notoriety, especially in Texas, especially when it's a peace officer and there's a taking of a life. That's gonna strike a lot of attention, a lot of interest. Okay, anybody else wanna share another case?
Oh,
Yeah,
we
go.
were talking about the Epstein.
Epstein.
The Jeffrey Epstein.
Okay, tell us
That,
about
okay, so basically, powerful guy, made his way up all the way, Wall Street and everything, wealthy.
Oh.
Ended up actually getting a bunch of young girls from high school to kind of take care of him with massages and
Yeah.
everything. Then he would take them to like an island and then, keep them away.
Yeah.
With other celebrities, that would also happen. And so they ended up arresting him, went to jail, but he hung himself. And so now he had a girlfriend as well that would help him. And so now I think she's in jail trying to also, like everybody's telling me that she's guilty because she's the one who would also kind of go and get the girls
Sure,
for him.
yeah, accessory.
But
Yeah.
that drove tons of attention. There's
Okay.
shows on Netflix. I mean, it's
Yeah.
huge.
Oh, Netflix is good.
Yeah.
Yeah, Netflix is good, yeah. So let me throw this out there. I talk a lot about extra credit, because I know life happens, we miss an assignment or something. If you need extra credit points, you don't have to wait for me to make an offer. You could view something like this, a documentary, but run it by me first, so we're on the same page. Do your, I don't want to say investigation, but your research. Do your research on the case. Prepare a nice paper, 1,200, 1,500 words, submit it as extra credit. And I'll give you extra credit points. Okay? Especially make it relate back to what we're doing in class, like right now, a high notoriety case. So that's out there. Anything you think of that you might want to ask for extra credit, run it by me. Most likely the answer's gonna be yeah, of course. Anything you do over and above, I like that. Stimulates the interest. Perspectives on justice. Considering the complexity of the system, it should not be surprising that we don't agree. Okay, we're never going to agree. People who study the field or work in its agencies bring their own ideas, feelings to bear when they try to decide on the right course of action or to recommend a course of action. For the most part, people are good. For the most part. Every once in a while, you run across that individual, just can't understand why they do things the way they do. They make bad decisions. Then there's those individuals that are pure evil. Okay, I've met a few in my life. Not many, but a few. I look them in the eye, and it felt like I was looking right at the devil. Pure evil. One right away comes to mind. His last name happened to be Martinez. He was part of the Texas Syndicate. His AKA was El Diablo. And this guy was the freaking devil incarnate. I do not doubt it. What's that idiot? Gosh darn it. The swastika guy, Charles Manson. I had Manson in Corcoran, I dealt with him in Vacaville, and I dealt with him again in San Quentin. Just a little raunchy, skinny piece of garbage. But I would not lock eyes with him. He had a scary look about him. He could control people. Very persuasive. Got other people doing his dirty work. Advances. There are evil people out there. This table's good. Okay, maybe not in this class, but they're out there. Okay, you'll know it. Hopefully you never meet a person like that. They're not very common, but they are out there. Bad people, yeah, most of them just make mistakes. Working in the prisons for so long, I got to know a lot of these people, inmates, young people, inmates, and have conversations with them. You know, why are you here? What did you do? For the most part, I drew the opinion that the only reason that person is on that side of the fence and I'm on this side of the fence, they got caught. That was it. Growing up, I grew up in the projects, poor as hell. Family worked their way out, trying to make a better life for their children, for their mom and dad. I saw a lot of things as a child. Bad things. Anybody ever heard of West La Familia? BNF? The notorious Northern gang. Mexican Mafia, Emmett?
Yeah.
Emmett? Crips, Bloods, all that. Crips weren't even around when I started. Bloods were in the BGF. Okay, so
I was in a place and the Northerners,
yeah.
as you would call them in layman's terms.
North Daniels is different. That's a whole different game.
That's what, whatever. But anyway, they did 3 stabbings at one time. They put the yard down, building 1 went down, building 3 went down.
Which prison?
Pleasant Valley State Prison.
That's where I retired from.
I saw that.
I opened that damn prison. It wasn't nice either. April 1st, 1995. April 1st, 1995. Huge freaking riot. Stabbing, shots fired. Nobody died, thank goodness, but we did get a collapsed lung, officer injuries. It gets crazy out there. And those sureños going off, trying to make their strength known in numbers. They didn't fare too well. Okay, but it was a racial. Anytime you get a racial riot like that, it's dangerous. It's so dangerous to integrate races and gangs, rival gangs. So anyway, that was another time. But the violence, the justice, the perspective, are we really doing the right thing? I don't know. That's a personal opinion. Does our criminal justice system work? Compared to other countries, I say we do okay. Could it be better? Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm glad we're addressing these issues about bail. And we're going to talk about bail later on. Bail is just ridiculous. The philosophy that only if you have money, you can get out of jail. That's ridiculous. Anyway, we're switching that around. The other issue I have a lot of problems with is plea bargaining. And we're going to dive into plea bargaining down the road. As a whole, we do okay. Our juvenile system does okay. Some of these young offenders, how 12, 13-year-old kids already on drugs, by 14 females having babies? Wow, where did we go wrong? I don't blame anyone. I blame society. How did we get so damn far? But again, this is me. You're entitled to your own opinions. You can say, that guy is way off. Of course 14-year-olds should have kids. That's up to you. I was talking about this in one class, and maybe it applies here, I don't know. There was a young lady, she had children, and she approached me after class and we talked about it. And she goes, thank you for saying that. It was a mistake at the time, but now that I have my child, it's the best thing that ever happened. I said, okay, good for you. She made it work. She's trying to improve herself. She's doing it the hard way, she admitted, but she's doing it. Everyone walks a different path, right? Walk your own path, own up to your mistakes, get over it, move on. Crime control perspective emphasizes the control of dangerous offenders, protection of society, harsh punishment is a deterrent to crime. We're gonna get into different types of deterrents, specific and general deterrent, and how we apply punishment. This is one theory, the rehabilitative model. That's only one idea. And it does work for some people. Doesn't work for all people, but it does for some. There's a saying, and I'm the worst when it comes to sayings. Let me get that clear. I'll mess up most of them, but I think I'll get this one right. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. Right? You've heard of that, hopefully? Please. Same idea here. You could lead an individual to substance abuse counseling. Talk about the damage they're doing to themselves and to their family. Try to open their eyes how this might not be your best path using narcotics. Some of them listen. Some of them don't. That doesn't mean the program itself doesn't work. Some, it does work. For others, it doesn't. Counseling programs are stressed over punishment and deterrent strategies. So punishment. Rehabilitation, I don't think is a punishment, but when you take someone out of the community and put them in a prison or a jail, and then tell them, we're going to counsel you and talk to you about rehabilitative methods. And hopefully you'll listen to us. So that kind of is a punishment because you were taken from your home and placed somewhere you don't want to be.
It doesn't address the causative factors that led to the incarceration. Sometimes it does. And there was one, most of the time it just depends. Robert Downey Jr., I was working in Sacramento when he went to a substance abuse treatment facility in Portland. And this guy, I don't know if you ever watched, he wasn't my favorite actor, first of all, but now I think he's all right. Growing up, Netflix, whoever said Netflix, there was a documentary on Robert Downey Jr. And he felt as a child, the only way he could connect to his father was by sitting on the couch getting high on him. His dad encouraged him. His mom was okay with it. He grew up in a family that were in the entertainment business. Okay, so that's all he knew. He got a little bit up in age. Drugs were always a big part of his life. He started experimenting a little bit more. There was underlying issues that were not addressed until he got to this substance treatment facility. And I think that was an eye-opener for him. And at that point, and this is just me thinking, I believe he made the decision that he wanted to change. He had had enough. He had been in and out of the system plenty of times, but that was the last time he's been in. Now, does he still use drugs? I don't know, but he hasn't got caught. So either he stopped using them or he got better at hiding them. Don't know. So rehabilitative, we take an offender with the idea that we're going to incarcerate him for a little bit with the intent on modifying that behavior, making him a good citizen, and then putting him back out into the community. That's what it's all about, the rehabilitative process. Okay, two more perspectives. This one's called due process, and the other one, non-intervention. Due process. Individual rights are the priority. Constitutional safeguards. The concern is that every defendant receive the full share of the rights granted by the Constitution. That is when you hear due process model. That every individual accused of a crime be afforded all the rights they should have. Didn't used to be like that. Okay, so that's the due process. Non-intervention favors the least intrusive method possible, such as decarceration, diversion, decriminalization, and we're kind of headed that way. The trend is headed towards decriminalization. When they revamped the penal code, they kind of made what were serious felonies misdemeanors, so we could take some of the pressure off the prisons and jail. Concern about stigma, helping defendants avoid that widening net of justice. These advocates call for the least intrusive method possible. You see a lot of this idea in the juvenile system. Once someone has been accused, not even found guilty, but accused of a crime, it does place a stigma on this individual. These people tend to be treated differently. This happened at Pleasant Valley when I was still there. I had an officer, and I knew the guy. I can tell you his name, Larry Macklin. He worked for me, decent guy. We weren't friends, but I knew him. He was in a blended family. Okay. His wife's daughter was a little bit on the wild side. Not a bad kid, but a little bit on the wild side. About 14 years old. They get the idea, her and a friend, because her friend said, I did this and it worked for me. So she tells Macklin's stepdaughter, you know what you do is accuse your stepdad that he touched you inappropriately. They wanted to go to a concert or something, and he had said no. She was too young. So she said, if you do that, they'll take him out of the house, then you can do whatever you want. Think about that for a minute. She followed through. The DA's office notified the prison. We put Larry on administrative leave. He almost lost his job. But the story here, his best friends cut him loose. They don't have nothing to do with this guy because of what he was accused of. So, like I said, Larry lived close to where I was at. I bump into him. I tell him, hi, how are you? How are things going for you? And he responded, are you sure you want to talk to me? Of course. I know what's going on. He told me what had happened, his best friends. Kind of just cut him loose, hung him out to dry. At the prison, I knew what was going on. I wasn't doing the investigation, but I knew who was, and we were talking about how the case was progressing. Come to find out, after about 3-4 months, the kid comes clean. And she tells the DA what she did. Larry never did anything wrong, but she just wanted to go to a concert. So the whole story comes out. He's reinstated, goes back in. How do you think he feels when he had to go back to work, knowing not only officers nobody was accused of, but the inmates on the yard? Do you think he was well received with open yard? Aren't? Hell no. They're calling him a child molester and all kinds of crazy things. And this guy did nothing wrong. Okay, so, stigma. Now imagine as a juvenile, a 12, 13-year-old, that something like this happens to them. Once that's placed, that stigma on that individual, it's very hard to remove. So the juvenile courts, that's why they work in secrecy. That's why the courtrooms are closed. Everything's done in private, nothing's publicized. They emphasize, take the offender, deal with them at the lowest possible level. Usually give them some community service, something like that. Send them on their way. Don't remove them from school. Try not to interrupt what they're doing as a normal routine. Anything we do to that child is going to affect them the rest of their life. And that's why records are sealed. Okay, so that doesn't haunt them later on in life. As children, okay, say 16 and under, think about some of the things you did that you weren't very proud of. Would you want everybody knowing what you've done? Hell no. I'd raise my hand. I don't want people to know all the stupid things I did as a kid. But that's part of growing up. Now as you get older and you continue making those same bad decisions, shame on you. Now you will be held accountable. Stigma always brings me down that discussion that please be careful when talking in social groups and somebody else's name comes up. Because it's so easy to tear somebody apart, especially with social media. What's it, the Facebook and the Instagrams and what's it, the TikTokies? You guys got so much crap out there to deal with. And once it's out there, good luck getting it back in. What's that? Putting the toothpaste back in the tube. Another good saying. I'm on a roll. Okay. Equal justice perspective. The system should be equitable. It should be. Arrest, sentencing, correctional process, there's a word, should be structured
that every person is dealt equally. Restorative process, I'll talk about that in a minute. Let me get into the equal justice perspective. Is the justice system equitable? What do we think? No. Who thinks it is? That everybody is treated fairly? I don't think so.
Well, I think it is depending on certain areas. Certain areas with the polarity is obviously going to be negative, and certain areas going to be positive. Like maybe low-lying fruit is going to be very positive. High fruit, very bad action. So
Yeah.
that's a very
possible.
ambiguous
Yeah.
answer and ambiguous question.
Yeah, the question is, do you think it's equitable? Pretty straightforward. But I get where you're coming from.
I don't know.
Yeah. From experience. Let's just say 1,000 cases. Okay, that's about right. I served on 3 capital cases as the lead investigator. So I worked on the street and I worked inside the system. My opinion, it is not equitable. Not at all. If you got money, you have clout, you get away with it. If you're poor, you're of color, you got nothing done. My opinion, my observations. We need to try, and I think we're making strides to making it more equitable, trying to make it fair, that if you're accused of a crime in Kings County, and that same crime in Orange County, the outcome should be similar, hopefully. Oh, let me talk about restorative justice. Okay, restorative justice focuses on finding peaceful humanitarian solutions to crime, stresses peacemaking, not punishment. Also, the focus is to making the victim whole as they were before the crime. You see a lot of that in civil cases. So if someone suffered an injury and you take the person who caused the injury to court, the court finds them guilty of whatever the offense is, and then they try to make you whole again. You lost your car, cost you $20,000. You lost 2 months from work, another $20,000. Suffering, pain, $50,000, $10,000 in hospital bills. They try to put a dollar figure. That's done in civil court. And they try to award that type of settlement to compensate for those damages. So that kind of focus on restorative, okay, trying to make you whole again is the principle. Key elements: crime control, the main beliefs. Rehabilitative. This is a nice slide because it gives you a snapshot of the theory. Crime control. This model here, you'll hear politicians during elections, vote for me, tough on crime. So that's their motto, tough on crime. I'll make sure they get longer sentences. No, they don't. They're lying to you. No, they don't. But that's usually the platform they take. Rehabilitative, in the long run, it's better to treat the individual for whatever ailment that causes them to offend. Treat that. And then when you put them back out, they should not reoffend. Sometimes it works, most of the time it doesn't, for a lot of other reasons. Okay, in due process, we talked about a little while ago. The theory is everyone should be afforded the full extent of their constitutional rights and any other rights they have to concept. Equal justice perspective, we talked about a minute ago, and restorative, we just finished. So any questions on these theories? There's 5 I already talked about. There's going to be a couple other. Medical model hasn't been talked about yet. We're going to get to that one. Let's see. Restitution is another one. So anyway, we're going to talk about a couple other theories, but for now, these are the ones we're focused on. What perspective on justice explains smoking marijuana? Which one would that fit under, those models that we talked about?
Restorative.
Restorative? Explain why?
Okay, maybe like the people who are taking heroin in Amsterdam, they scientifically found that people who have trouble with hard drugs, if they give them marijuana, they can get off the hard drugs, and they're
Okay.
not. So,
So they use marijuana as treatment for the?
yes, to get off, and then they can stop smoking marijuana because it's not as bad as heroin.
How long have they been doing that?
I don't know exactly, but I've known of this for a while, so it must be over 7 years old. 'Cause
Do
I've
you have
known it.
any idea what the success rate is on that treatment? This is new to me, I haven't heard of it.
Well, that brings to like the needle. They have vans or whatever, people who do drugs, they give them needles, and that way don't
Yeah.
spread AIDS.
Yep.
Same thing with Canada. I lived in Canada, and over in Quebec, a lot of the homeless outreach and all that stuff, they give them needles. I don't know exactly when, to answer your question though.
Okay. No, that's fine, it gives me something to do later. I'm interested. If that works, it's great. Other countries do have different approaches. You mentioned a couple.
Or even like psilocybin with people who are terminally ill or have traumatic brain injuries. Psilocybin's proven to make your brain fire in all different areas and connect stuff. So people who are going through hospice, it's criminally right now. It's treated criminally,
Okay.
and
And it
you know,
shouldn't
there's
be, so you're
medical
saying.
applications. Yeah.
Okay. Well, based on what you just said, being treated as criminally, but it actually benefits someone in hospice. What do you think of the right to take your own life? Not, I'm not feeling good today, ooh, woe's me, off yourself.
so-
No, I'm talking about that you've been diagnosed, you're terminally ill. Somebody's just suffering, whether in hospice or at home, but you're suffering. Your family's watching you go through all these changes. Do you think that individual, as long as they're of sound mind still, should be able to take their own life, put it into the misery? I see some heads nodding yeah over there. You agree with that?
I think it boils down to two things: pro-life, pro-choice, and I'm not gonna.
Yeah, no, that's a touchy one. We'll stick to this one.
But it's,
The right to take your own life.
that's pro-choice.
Okay. It also is applied in other things, and I want to focus on just the right to take your own choice. If you're at a point in your life, you're deteriorating, it's inevitable. You're suffering. I watched my grandfather go through this, and the family was always talking about it. He wanted to just die. You leave him go, unplug him, let him die. And the other half of the family, no, you can't do that. Going hysterical or crazy. They argued for days. He ended up just dying. He suffered. I think it took him like 7, 8 days. And then he just died. Was that humane to let him go through that? Or would it have been better to just tell the docs, pull the plug, let him go? What do we think?
In that case, I guess case by case basis, that case I would say, yeah, it'd been more humane to pull the plug.
What do you think, right here, Mr. Plug?
Well, I think it's just his own personal decision.
He wanted to pull the plug. He wanted to pull the plug. The family was the ones arguing.
I think if it's terminal, like there's no coming back,
No.
then at that point, might as well.
Honor his wishes.
Yeah, just kind of going off of the last kind of statement, like just asking or wondering if there's like a chance of a kind of survival through whatever suffering they're going to. If they knew there is a chance that, I could pull through, would
Yeah.
they still kind of make that decision? Or
Yeah.
just kind of-
It was more of a matter of when, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Okay, now let me ask this. How many of you had animals that you had to put down? You made that decision on behalf of that pet. I've done it a couple of times. Hardest thing in the world. Hardest thing in the world to say goodbye to this dog. I've had shepherds most of my life, and I got a nice shepherd tattoo up here, my first shepherd. This guy was my best friend for the longest time. So when he had to be put down, damn, that was hard. Tore me up. from the inside out. Does that kind of express your sentiments when you had to go? Yeah, I do that. And I won't keep going because tears usually start coming out of my eyeballs right about now, and I start thinking about them. Yeah.
About like whenever it's for people like animals,
Mhm.
it's like how much pain they're in
Mhm.
to determine whether or not if it's better for them to go.
Yeah.
If they're in like internally in pain to the point that it's too much suffering.
Exactly. That's exactly it. It was so much pain. Your dog, like, his name's Jerry. It was better for Jerry to be put down. They gave him 2 shots, right? The first one just kind of make him relax, and the last one he was gone. Okay, so I had to put down my shepherds. I told you I sat in 2 executions. One was the gas chamber, the other was lethal injection. Then Bob was really dead. The lethal injection, I thought it's too good of treatment. I would have given gas. Gas, they do suffer. Oh, hell yeah, and they know what's happening, they do suffer. Lethal injection, they just close their eyes, they're gone. Just like my dog did. My dog never hurt anybody. He deserved to be put down in peace. This criminal that's I'm thinking about didn't. For what that person did, he destroyed families. He hurt so many people. So I can't understand the opposition against the death penalty, other than we don't use it enough. And that's why I told you guys I oppose it. If we were to use it more frequently, more justly, no mistakes, then yeah, I'm all for it. Okay, so offenders should, they have the right, here we go with pro-choice again, to do with their bodies as they choose. If they choose to use drugs, should they be allowed to? It's a hard one.
I can tell you firsthand experience, they're gonna do it anyway.
Well, from the legal point of view. From a legal point of view, legal standing, should we have so many laws focused on substance abuse? Or should we allow the individual to make those decisions?
Look, it trickle down to children who don't really have the brain power to use their own brain. They are influenced by others. So if
Sure.
they're influenced by other substance users, then they themselves will become a substance user.
Let me ask the class, how is your thought process any different from alcohol and tobacco? We allow that. And it does trickle down, the same thing you're saying, trickles down to juveniles, and then they get hooked and they abuse it. But yet we tolerate it. Alcohol, tobacco.
But there's laws that limit drug use and get on the wheel and intoxicated. And things like heroin, like you said, that destroy families. Things like heroin destroy families. Kids, their upbringing, the kids end up like having to go to the foster care system or being raised with their parents or grandparents.
Absolutely, the drug abuse.
Yeah, the drug abuse, yeah.
The same thing happens with alcohol. I would say even more so, because it's so widely accepted. The answer to all these things, Andy, I'll get to you, is I don't have any answers. I'm just pointing out the conflict, the issues for you to try to come up with something. What do you got?
Yeah, I was just gonna say that there's a certain level of responsibility on the individual regarding alcohol and tobacco. I mean, I've been smoking since I was 15. I quit it back in 2016. I've been a drinker for as long as I can remember. But, there's a level of responsibility, whereas, drug users, drug abusers, they don't have that, restraint. They just continue to abuse it, where it creates a downfall in society.
Okay.
I
Well,
think
that's a good opinion, but that's all it is, but statistics to show that. That's what you believe, and that's great.
I think legally, these people, prisoners, whatever, they're wards of the state. Therefore, the government has an obligation to create standards of living that are not cruel and unusual
Mhm.
to human confinement.
Okay. Yeah, please.
I'll say the same thing we're saying, we're standing for for the individuals, but at the same time, there's no tolerance for drugs. Illegal drugs. No tolerance for
One thing we should all agree on, everything you guys have brought up, absolutely, you're right. Your thought processes, what you're thinking, you're right on point. We have laws that says you can't use controlled substances. People still do. I think you said they're gonna do what they're gonna do. We have laws that says if you drink, don't drive. People still do. People still get behind the wheel. They still cause injury to others, sometimes fatalities behind the wheel. We have laws that say you can't sell tobacco to minors. Minors cannot smoke tobacco. They still do. The laws, guys, I just want to leave you with this before we go to the next slide. The laws are only as good as we enforce them. Otherwise, what good are they? That's why it ticks me off. Every election, these guys getting up there lying to me, telling me how they're going to pass a new law, that they're going to do that. Just enforce the ones we have. We have laws that address these issues. Enforce them. Let's move on. Okay, so marijuana, the perspective. Are we for or against? Let's get just a show of hands. Who is okay with marijuana being legalized in California? Please, show of hands. Okay, looks like the majority. Okay, who opposes recreational use legal of marijuana? Please, show your hands, please. 1, 2, 3. Okay, good. 4. Okay.
I would actually, I don't oppose it, but in the federal government, if you're trying to seek employment, it's not tolerated.
Not at all. The feds is different. You're absolutely right. Federal government can come to California, see you using recreational drugs, have a card, it's legal completely. Still make an arrest, charge you federally. You're not like to state them. Because it's a separate court system. They don't do it because pretty much it's none of their business. California says we're going to allow it. And the states have quite a bit of authority. Remember we talked about the dad and the mom with the purse strings? If the feds really wanted to make that change, all they would do is threaten California. Say, make it illegal again, or we're going to do this, this, and this. But right now, it's kind of not really hurting anybody. So we're allowed. The majority, though, based on this survey we just took, I'd say maybe 90+% are okay with marijuana legalization. Me included. I'll even go further. I want to make cocaine legal. I wouldn't mind seeing heroin legal. Really wouldn't. Those hard drugs, I don't mind making them legal. However, in order to obtain these drugs, you gotta see a doctor, a counselor. Make sure you know it's educated. Make sure you know what you're getting involved in. Then give them the prescription. Monitor the use. Make sure they're still functioning. We have so many drug users, not abusers, users, hardcore drugs that are functioning. Their own people don't even know they're on drugs, but they are. They're high functioning. That's their business. I'm really into the Constitution, individual rights. The right. I should be able to do whatever the hell I want with my body. If I want to put ink on it, I'm putting ink. If I want to get high, I'm going to get high. I don't. I still can't. I don't know why. I just can't. But I do. I don't drink. I don't smoke. I'm boring. I don't do all that stuff. But I acknowledge your right to do so. If you choose to do those things, good for you. I like guns. Okay, I like my guns. I got a nice collection. I'm licensed to carry. Not a 00 yet, but I'm going for it. And then there's people that hate guns. All guns should be taken. You believe what you believe. Let me take care of myself. I'm not going to tell you how to live your life. Don't force your perspective on me. Yeah.
Wait, this might be a little bit ignorant, but I'm thinking about like where the drugs come from, and like you're saying, you know, you can do whatever you want as long as it imposes on somebody else's. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
My bad. On somebody else's like, you know, safety or whatnot. So
Yeah.
where do those drugs come from, and like what are the implications? Like,
That's an awesome
You know what I
question.
mean?
Where's legal marijuana coming from now? The legal part. Licensed farms. The licensing. There's
fees attached to those permits. There's taxes attached to those, the usage of it. The government is making money. Now we can fund with those monies rehabilitation services. Doesn't come out of our tax dollars. Heroin, cocaine, licensed in homes, individuals, manufacturing, whoever it is, the government's got a license and monitoring. We're creating jobs. We're taking it from the underground. The people that are opposed to these things that I'm telling you are the criminals. You imagine the money they're losing? They didn't want marijuana legal. They're losing tons of money. You legalize cocaine and heroin? Forget about it. Why do you have to go to some pusher on the street corner when you go to a pharmacy? Licensed, regulated, monitored, provide substance abuse treatment, educate the users, the needle issue that was brought up. There's a lot of things you can do. I'll leave you with that. Justice system, they deal with many ethical issues. The challenge, determine what is fair, what is just, what is balanced, and what do we have to do to protect our communities? The scales of justice. Right? It's a symbol. You can visualize it. She's standing up there blindfolded, because justice should be blind. Doesn't matter who you are, how much money you have, what color your skin. The scales, due process versus individual rights. How much of your individual right are you willing to sacrifice for the safety of your community? We'll talk about that question moving forward. How much is fair? After 9/11, the airport security protocols, they very restricted. Take off your belt, take off your shoes. I have my pump implant. They have to come over x-ray me. I don't care. This is an individual right. Without a warrant, they should be able to do this to me. They don't have cause, probable cause. We as a community, as a nation, agreed to sacrifice that right for the safety of our community. I'm okay with it. I'm sick and tired of it now, but at the time, I was okay with it. So think to yourself, how much of your individual rights are you willing to sacrifice for the protection of the community? You can't have both. It's one or the other. And we will talk about that a little bit more. Okay, evidence suggests that laws regarding monitoring of sexual offenders are not especially effective. They don't lower recidivism rates. Do you believe monitoring sex offenders is an effective way to lower recidivism if these studies are accurate? Why does such monitoring continue? And given this evidence, do you still support these laws? Okay, laws. Sexual offenders. I don't remember the year, but Harris was the criminal. The state kept him incarcerated as long as they could. He was a violent sexual predator. He served his full sentence. After that sentence is up, the state has no more authority. They had to release him. Within months, he raped and killed Alifaz. The state looked at it and said, what can we do to prevent this from happening? We were watching him, he slipped away. We knew he was going to reoffend, and he did. So they came up with a sexual violent predator crime model. They take these people, once they've done their time in prison, instead of releasing them, now they go to a civil court for a civil proceeding. And if they're found to not be mentally stable to be released back into society, they're put into a sexually violent predator prison. They call it an institution, mental house. It's a prison. Drake, if you were at Pleasant Valley, that huge facility
The
on
medical,
other end,
yeah.
that was the mental facility.
It was a loony bin, yeah.
The loony bin, okay. Yeah, that's what it is. But it was designed for sexual violent predators. So now, had we had that in place, this individual would have never been allowed out on the street. He would have went to the court. The court would have found that he's unstable and sentenced him to the loony bin, where X amount of time, he goes back before the court, he's reevaluated. He's got to show, demonstrate that he is stable. This guy never will be, but at least the community is safe. Now think about it. He's never committed a crime, never went to the criminal court, and yet he'll never see one day of freedom. The community agreed. They were willing to sacrifice that much of their liberties to ensure the safety of the community. That's the example I always like to use because it points out it does work. Okay?
I read in Prison Legal News, somebody, on that topic, they went into one of those facilities way long ago, and, because of some penal code, they could never file writ of habeas corpus, therefore they could never get out.
It's interesting. We've got a couple of minutes. Ethics. I'll leave you with this one. Ethics. Ethics in law enforcement. Ethics in any industry. In any industry. If you don't have ethical behavior, it's not going to work. Most professions have some type of code of conduct. You have one just for being in class. Student code of conduct. I also have one. Employer. Employer-employee relationship. I have a handbook. I have rules I have to follow. So do you. In law enforcement, you have power over other people, other individuals. You're held to a higher standard. How many of you do 55 in a 55-mile-an-hour zone? One. I don't. I don't. Okay. Yeah, 60, 62, I'm okay with that. I get pulled over, I get cited for going over the speed limit. How does that look when a cop is pulled over and cited for going over the speed limit? You should know better. Medical field, you see the same type of ethical expectation. They're held to a higher standard. If you work at McDonald's, the ethical standard, just don't spit in the fries. It's a little lower. Okay, questions about anything with ethics or anything we talked about? Okay, have a good week. Take care, guys. Thank you for paying attention.